I was 36 years old when I took my first international flight, not because I didn't want to travel, but because I'd convinced myself that people like me didn't deserve to see the world. What happened at a dusty community center in San Antonio's west side would shatter every limiting belief I'd carried about money, worth, and what the universe had in store for a broke construction worker from the barrio. My name is Miguel Santos, and this is the story of how I went from counting pennies to boarding a plane to Barcelona, all because I finally learned that your thoughts create your reality, and poverty is just another prison we build in our own minds. Let me take you back to March of last year, when my biggest financial goal was making it to payday without overdrafting my checking account. I'd been working construction in San Antonio for 15 years, swinging hammers and pouring concrete under the brutal Texas sun, watching my body break down while my bank account stayed empty. Every month was the same cycle: bills, rent, groceries, and maybe $20 left over that usually went to my nephew's birthday party or helping my sister with her car payment. I lived in a small apartment on the south side where the walls were thin and the dreams felt even thinner. My neighbors were good people, hard-working families who, like me, had accepted that struggling was just our lot in life. We'd grown up hearing the same stories. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are lucky or corrupt. People like us don't get to travel the world. But there was this ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. Every time I saw photos of friends from high school posting pictures from Cancun or Europe, I felt this mixture of joy for them and deep sadness for myself. I'd scroll through travel videos on social media, watching people explore ancient ruins and eat street food in Bangkok, and I'd think, that's not for people like me. The financial blockade wasn't just about money, it was about identity. I'd internalized the belief that poverty was part of my DNA, that wanting more was somehow betraying my roots. My parents had immigrated from Guadalajara with nothing but hope and determination, working multiple jobs to keep us fed and housed. They'd sacrificed everything for stability, and here I was, their son, dreaming of adventures that seemed impossibly selfish. But everything changed on a Tuesday evening in March, when I made a decision that felt completely out of character. I was walking home from work, exhausted and covered in concrete dust, when I saw a handwritten sign taped to a telephone pole. Free workshop, breaking financial barriers, community center, 7 p.m. tonight. Something about that sign stopped me cold. Maybe it was the word free. God knows I couldn't afford to pay for advice. Maybe it was the timing, coming just 2 days after I'd been turned down for a loan to fix my truck. Or maybe it was the universe nudging me toward something I didn't even know I needed. The community center was exactly what you'd expect: fluorescent lights, folding chairs, and the smell of industrial disinfectant mixed with decades of potluck dinners. About 20 people were scattered around the room, mostly Latino families like mine, looking skeptical but curious. I almost turned around and left, but something made me stay. The workshop leader was a woman named Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, probably in her 50s, with silver hair and the kind of presence that made you pay attention. She didn't look wealthy in the flashy way, no designer clothes or expensive jewelry, but there was something about her energy that felt abundant. She radiated the kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're worth. "How many of you," she began, "have been taught that wanting more money makes you greedy?" Almost every hand in the room went up, including mine. "How many of you believe that good people are supposed to struggle financially?" More hands. "And how many of you think that people like us, people from our neighborhoods, our families, our backgrounds, don't deserve to live abundantly?" The room fell silent, but I could feel the collective recognition. She was naming something we'd all felt, but never said out loud. Dr. Rodriguez smiled with a warmth that made me feel seen. "Tonight, we're going to talk about the law of attraction and money. But first, I want you to understand something. Your current financial situation is not a reflection of your worth as a human being. It's a reflection of the thoughts and beliefs you've been carrying, most of which aren't even yours." She told us her story, how she'd grown up in poverty in El Paso, how she'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, how she'd spent years believing that money was evil, and that wanting financial freedom was somehow wrong. But then she'd discovered the work of Napoleon Hill and Abraham Hicks, and everything changed. Attracting abundance isn't about becoming someone different, she said. It's about remembering who you've always been underneath all the programming. But here's where the workshop took a turn that would change my life forever. Dr. Rodriguez asked us to do an exercise that felt terrifying. She wanted us to write down our biggest, most impossible dream, the thing we wanted but had convinced ourselves we could never have. I stared at that blank piece of paper for what felt like forever. My mind was cycling through all the reasonable dreams: a better job, a nicer apartment, maybe a truck that didn't break down every month. But underneath all that was something deeper, something I'd been carrying since I was a kid, watching National Geographic documentaries at the library. Finally, I wrote, "I want to travel to Spain and walk the Camino de Santiago." Even writing it felt ridiculous. I barely had enough money for groceries and I was dreaming about international travel, but something about putting those words on paper made them feel more real than they'd ever felt before. Dr. Rodriguez had us share our dreams with the group, and when it was my turn, I felt my face burning with embarrassment. "I want to walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain," I said quietly. "I've been fascinated by it since I was a kid, but I've never even had a passport." Instead of judgment, I saw nodding heads around the room. Other people shared dreams that felt just as impossible: starting businesses, buying homes, sending their kids to college without debt. We were all carrying the same shame about wanting more. "Miguel," Dr. Rodriguez said, "what would it feel like to be walking that ancient path in Spain?" I closed my eyes and tried to imagine it. The morning mist on the hills, the sound of my boots on cobblestones, the sense of following in the footsteps of pilgrims who'd walked that path for over 1,000 years. For just a moment, it felt real. "That feeling," she said, "is your vibrational alignment with your dream. Every time you feel that excitement, that sense of possibility, you're raising your vibration and telling the universe what you want to manifest." She taught us about visualization techniques, about how manifesting isn't about wishful thinking. It's about quantum manifestation, about aligning our thoughts and feelings with the reality we want to create. She talked about gratitude practices and affirmations, but in a way that felt authentic to our culture and our struggles. "The universe doesn't care about your bank account," she said. "It responds to your power of intention and your willingness to believe that you deserve good things." I left that workshop with a notebook full of exercises and a heart full of something I hadn't felt in years: hope. But more than that, I left with a new understanding of what the universe is listening actually means. It's not about asking for handouts. It's about stepping into your power as a conscious creator of your own reality. That night, I started my first real gratitude practice. Instead of focusing on what I didn't have, I started writing down 3 things I was grateful for every morning. At first, it felt forced, grateful for my health, my job, my family. But as the days went by, I started noticing things I'd been taking for granted: the way the light hit my apartment in the morning, the fact that I had skills that people needed, the strength in my hands that allowed me to build things. But here's where the magic really started happening. Within a week of the workshop, my boss approached me about overtime work on a weekend project. Normally, I might have said no. Weekends were for rest, for family, for trying to recover from the week. But something Dr. Rodriguez had said kept echoing in my mind. Signs from the universe often come disguised as opportunities. I said yes to the overtime. Then I said yes to the next project and the next. Not from a place of desperation, but from a place of positive mindset, knowing that I was attracting abundance by aligning my actions with my intentions. Within a month, I'd saved more money than I'd saved in the previous year. But the real shift wasn't in my bank account. It was in my relationship with money itself. I stopped seeing it as something scarce and started seeing it as energy that flowed through my life when I was aligned with my purpose. I started visualizing my trip to Spain every morning, not just the destination, but the journey. I imagined myself at the airport, passport in hand, feeling excited instead of intimidated. I visualized the flight, the landing in Madrid, the moment I'd take my first steps on the Camino. I could feel the Spanish sun on my face, smell the coffee and pastries in the little towns along the way. But let me be honest, It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when the old beliefs came flooding back. Days when I'd look at my savings account and think, who am I kidding? Construction workers from the barrio don't take international vacations. Days when I'd feel guilty for wanting something that felt so far beyond my family's expectations. The breakthrough came 3 months after the workshop. I was having lunch with my sister Maria, telling her about my savings plan and my dream of walking the Camino. Her reaction was exactly what I'd feared. "Mijo," she said, "that's a lot of money to spend on a vacation. What if something happens? What if you need that money for an emergency?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut because they echoed every doubt I'd been carrying. But then I remembered something Dr. Rodriguez had said. When people try to talk you out of your dreams, they're usually trying to keep you small so they don't have to examine their own limitations. I looked at my sister, this woman I loved who'd spent her whole life playing it safe, working jobs she hated, never taking risks, and I realized she wasn't trying to protect me from failure. She was trying to protect herself from the possibility that maybe, just maybe, we didn't have to stay stuck in the same patterns our parents had lived. "Maria," I said gently, "what if it's not about the money? What if it's about proving to myself that I'm worth investing in?" Something in her expression shifted. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to dream of being a teacher before life convinced her that dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. "You really think you can do this?" she asked quietly. "I don't just think it," I said. "I know it. The universe is conspiring to help me, and I'm finally ready to let it." That conversation was a turning point. From that moment on, opportunities started appearing everywhere. A friend mentioned that his company was looking for someone to help with a renovation project, cash work that paid twice what I was making in construction. A neighbor asked if I could help him flip a house, offering me a percentage of the profits. Even my regular boss started giving me more responsibility and better pay. But the real miracle happened when I started studying Neville Goddard's teachings about living from the end. Instead of hoping and wishing for my trip to Spain, I started living as if it was already real. I bought a guidebook and read it cover to cover. I started learning basic Spanish phrases. I researched hostels and planned my route. Most importantly, I applied for my first passport. Walking into that post office and filling out the forms felt like the most revolutionary act of my life. I was claiming my right to be a citizen of the world, not just a worker trapped in my zip code. 6 months after that first workshop, I had saved $4,000, more money than I'd ever had at one time in my life. But more than that, I had transformed my entire relationship with money and possibility. I'd gone from someone who lived paycheck to paycheck to someone who understood that abundance was my birthright. The day I booked my flight to Madrid, I called Dr. Rodriguez to thank her. "Miguel," she said, "you didn't just manifest a trip. You manifested a new version of yourself. You're not the same person who walked into that community center 6 months ago." She was right. The man who boarded that plane to Spain was someone who believed in his own worth, who understood that creating your dream life isn't about getting lucky. It's about aligning your thoughts, feelings, and actions with what you want to experience. The Camino itself was everything I'd imagined and more. For 2 weeks, I walked through ancient villages and rolling hills, carrying nothing but a backpack and a heart full of gratitude. I met people from all over the world, doctors and teachers and artists and entrepreneurs, and I realized that the only difference between them and the old me was that they'd never been taught to believe they didn't deserve to explore the world. But the most profound moment came on the 5th day of walking. I was climbing a particularly steep hill, my legs burning and my breath coming in short gasps, when I had what I can only describe as a spiritual awakening. I looked out over the Spanish countryside, golden in the morning light, and I felt this overwhelming sense of connection to something larger than myself. I thought about my parents, who'd crossed borders and oceans to give their children a better life. I thought about my sister, still trapped in her limiting beliefs. I thought about all the people in my neighborhood who'd been taught that dreams were for other people, and I realized that by breaking my own financial barriers, I was breaking barriers for all of them. When I returned to San Antonio, everything had changed. Not just my bank account, though I'd managed to save even more money while I was gone, thanks to the overflow work I'd set up before leaving. but my entire energy was different. I walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and started seeing opportunities everywhere. Within 3 months of returning from Spain, I'd started my own contracting business. Not because I'd suddenly become a different person, but because I'd remembered who I'd always been underneath all the programming. I was someone who deserved to prosper, someone who could create value in the world, someone who was worthy of abundance. But here's the most beautiful part of this story. Last month I got a call from my sister Maria. "Miguel," she said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about investing in ourselves, about deserving good things." She told me she'd been accepted to a teaching program at the local community college. At 42, she was finally pursuing the dream she'd given up on decades ago. "I kept thinking about you in Spain," she said. "If my little brother can walk across a foreign country, maybe I can walk across a classroom." That's when I understood the true power of intention. When we transform our own limiting beliefs, we give everyone around us permission to transform theirs. When we prove that the universe is abundant, we create space for others to claim their own abundance. Today, my contracting business is thriving. I've been back to Spain twice, and I'm planning trips to Peru and Thailand. But more importantly, I volunteer at the same community center where Dr. Rodriguez changed my life, helping other people break through their own financial barriers. Every month I see the same look in people's eyes that I had that first night, the mixture of hope and disbelief, the longing for something more mixed with the fear that maybe they don't deserve it. And I get to tell them what someone told me. The universe is listening, and you are worthy of every good thing you can imagine. The law of attraction taught me that poverty isn't a life sentence, it's a mindset. Manifesting isn't about getting lucky, it's about remembering your power. And creating your dream life isn't about becoming someone different, it's about becoming who you've always been underneath all the limitations. If you're watching this and feeling trapped by your circumstances, if you've been told that people like you don't get to live abundantly, if you've been carrying the belief that wanting more makes you greedy or ungrateful, I want you to know that those beliefs are not yours. They're programs you inherited, and you have the power to rewrite them. Start with gratitude for what you have. Add visualization of what you want. Take inspired action toward your dreams. And trust that the universe wants to support you in ways you can't even imagine. Your dreams aren't too big. You're not too old, too poor, or too anything. You're exactly where you need to be to begin the most important journey of your life, the journey back to believing in your own worth and possibility. The community center where this all began still offers free workshops on the west side of San Antonio. Dr. Rodriguez is still there, still helping people remember their power, still proving that transformation is possible for anyone brave enough to believe they deserve it. If you're ready to break through your own financial barriers and claim the abundance that's waiting for you, comment below. I am worthy of prosperity. And if this story reminded you that your dreams are valid no matter where you come from, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of real transformation and manifestation. Share this with someone who needs to remember that the universe has no limits. Only we do. Your passport to abundance is waiting. Your dream life is calling. The question isn't whether you're capable of transformation. The question is whether you're ready to remember who you really are. The Camino taught me that every journey begins with a single step. What step will you take today toward the life you truly want?